Hey, I hope everybody's having a good night. I've decided to kind of redo that first video I did. Um, it's pretty long, pretty boring. Not boring, I don't really know. I just didn't like it that much. So I already did my intro video, so kind of let me tell you a little bit of my background with anxiety and depression. After I had my first child, I was diagnosed with postpartum depression. Like 800 million people are. I think it's a pretty common thing. And from there, it snowballed. I struggled for years not really knowing what was going on, what was happening. Doctors putting me on medication after medication. Didn't realize I had anxiety. No one ever talked to me about anxiety. I would have these like panic fits that we call them. Like if we're getting ready to leave and things weren't ready to go, I would like start freaking out about it and getting upset and getting mad or like just frustrated about it. So that went on for a few years. Then I had my son Carson, who's 13, and when I had him, the doctor was very clear at the beginning that she knew we were dealing with someone who had postpartum depression before. Right after right after I had Carson, we started kind of dealing with it, which was good, which was really good. A couple years after Carson was born, I had a breakdown, a pretty good breakdown. A lot of factors to do with it. I had lost a job that I was fired unlawfully, if you want to call it. The company actually got sued over it. So yeah, I spiraled. I call it my spiral. I went from doing what I love to doing nothing, literally nothing, barely taking care of myself, sleeping all night, getting the kids up and sending them to school and sleeping all day long. It got pretty bad to the point that one day my mom came over to the house and I asked her to take my kids and my husband because I didn't want to live anymore. They had already been in contact with my doctor and we had already been talking about things and took me right to the emergency room and I was admitted to the hospital. I spent a long time in the hospital then. I want to say 6 weeks. It was pretty rough. A lot of things came out of that. It came up that I never had postpartum depression. I have been depressed for a really long time. They figured since I was a child, I had a lot of bullying as a kid. So that's kind of what we diagnosed with it. That's when we found out I had anxiety. In my family, they have these things called shepherd spells. That's my mom's maiden name. And I would always hear about these shepherd spells. Well, as I grew to know kind of what I was going through, I would have these shepherd spells, and those are anxiety attacks. And yeah, so I spent 6 weeks in the hospital, tried a few times to take me home for a couple day visits and stuff. I'm going to say that was about 9 years ago when this one happened. My niece Sophie was a baby, and my brother came and took me to his house, and so my kids could come visit, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't handle it. So it took a while to get me out of the hospital that time, but I did. But when they got me out of the hospital, I was on a crazy amount of medication. I was on 21 pills a day to function, and I couldn't function. I was stoned all the time. When I realized that, I started kind of weaning myself off the medication, which I shouldn't have done. I did it not telling my doctors. But there was no therapy ever done with any of this. So what ended up happening was a couple years later, I ended up back in the hospital for the same thing. And not on as much medication. This time we had a little bit more better follow-up with what was going on. A little more therapy to deal with things. So yeah, that's kind of the first two episodes. We can talk more. I'll talk more a little bit about them, later on. Kind of where I'm at right now, just to give you an idea. In January, my mom had a brain aneurysm, and she has been up and down for 6.5 months. She's had 5, maybe 6 brain surgeries where they've gone in and had to do things to her brain. I don't want to use the word vegetable because she's not. It's a terrible, terrible thing to say. She can understand, she can talk a bit, but she can't really function. Recently, yesterday, she was just denied into going into rehab to help get her better, which really sucks because she was doing better. Sorry, tears. So my brother and my stepdad and I are going to fight that a bit and see what we can do for her. I told my brother if I had to get 3 other jobs to pay for her to be in a good nursing home to get good care, I would, because I don't want her just sitting there. I think they feel that there's nothing they can do for her anymore. So that's been a pretty tough blow the last 6 months, because some days she's really good, some days she's really bad. So yeah, that's hard, and I'm so far away from her. I've been home once. I've been back to Canada once. Going home, I think, is what started the spiral that I'm going through now. I've tried to really get on top of it with what I know therapy-wise, and it just one day was enough, and I went to the doctor and talked to him, and he put me on some medication to kind of help see if we could alleviate it. Well, then, 5 weeks ago, I had to have emergency neck surgery. I had a disc pushing on my spinal cord, and it was like getting ready to sever my spinal cord. So it was pretty serious. But I was really afraid because I had to sit, and I had to lay down, and I had to be still. And I don't like to be still because then my brain ruminates, thinks a lot, and won't stop. So that's kind of why I think I am the way I am right now. We tried going on a little bit of a vacation that my in-laws had planned, and it was great for everybody else, but not so much for me. Come home and have to try to get back to work, and I'm really, really struggling. I love my job. I love what I do. I love my kids at the gym like they're my own. So not being with them is really tough. I got up this morning and I had to go to the doctor's. I still can't drive. I'm supposed to be wearing a neck brace right now, so I'm kind of cheating. My father-in-law, who I call my dad, took me to the doctor's today. We're doing a little bit change up on the medication, and we did talk about hospitalization eventually if this doesn't get any better. So we're going to talk. I have a therapy appointment tomorrow to see my therapist. I have a good therapist here so far. Her name's Vicky. She's just like my therapist in Canada. Straight shooter, no holds bars, which sometimes is pretty tough for me to take. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at. Mental illness has a really bad stigma, and I was afraid to do this, and I still am pretty afraid to do it. But I want people to know that you can function and you can get better and you can do well. And I'm hoping that by me going through this and talking about it with people, if anyone listens, that that I can get better faster and I can help, because I think God put me on this earth to help people. And I think there's a reason that I go through this, because every time I go through it, it makes me stronger. I'm better when I'm done. I'm better when I get through it. So tomorrow's a pretty big day. We have a doctor's appointment for Peyton because she's going through some stuff, and I have to go to therapy. So therapy usually wears me out, but my plan is to come home and just continue to work, and then go to the gym tomorrow night and kick butt with my kids. I've got I've got a good support group around here. I'm not sure if they all really know that this is why I've not been at work too much. And I hope when and if they do find out, they don't judge me, because it's a struggle. That's the struggle. I think that's why people don't talk about it, is because they're so worried about being judged and so worried about being made fun of or exiled from things. So, yeah. So, oh, look at that. I'm almost at 11 minutes again. So I'll finish with this. I'm going to say it out loud. I'm going to go do some self-care. I'm going to go take a nice long bath and take care of myself, which is important. I'm going to read a little bit of a book that a friend of mine gave me, that's super important in my life. I'm learning. I'm new to Christianity, so I have this really awesome book she's given me, and I'm reading it, so I'm going to read a chapter or two of that. And I'm saying all this for accountability, whether there's someone listening or whether there's not. So I'm going to get up in the morning and go with Peyton for an appointment. I'm going to go to my appointment. I'm going to come home. I'm going to do my work. I'm going to go to the gym tomorrow night, and I'm going to kill it with my kids. And I'm going to live tomorrow like I should. Even if it's tough, I'm going to push. I'm really going to push tomorrow, because enough's enough. So, I'm sorry I look awful. I have greasy, gross hair. I have giant bags under my eyes because all I do is cry. But I'll get over that. So, yeah, I hope that somebody finds this interesting and somebody finds this helpful. I'll come back tomorrow with what happens at therapy and kind of where I go from there. Thanks for listening, and I hope you guys all have a great night.